Well, welcome back. This is week 9. We are at the French Revolution. I've rolled up my sleeves a little bit because this is going to get a little messy. Unlike the American Revolution, the French Revolution doesn't go as smoothly as did the American. We got a lot of ups and downs and lots of blood. Lots of blood. Bad stuff happening. So what we're going to do is we're going to start by jumping into a little bit of the circumstances that filled or surrounded that French Revolution, sort of sparked it up. So let's take a look. So we come back to the situation, the problem, opportunity, and choices, this triangle, this cycle of choices. You're very familiar with this by now. I want to take a look at this as from the standpoint of France's situation, not only from the people that rise up, but also from the king. So if you recall, back in 1770, 1774, right around there, King Louis XV, he's ruling. He's a hardcore general welfare, kingdom welfare kind of king. He is not well liked by the people. When I say people, I'm talking about those intermediaries, that kind of upper crust who are the lawyers, the bankers, the landowners, things of that sort of thing, as well as the other elements of nobility and the clergy. There is this fight. He wants to protect the nation. They want self-interest. What is in it for us? How are you going to protect our interests, our money, our businesses, our land? Well, in 1774, Louis XV dies. He dies of smallpox. And his grandson, Louis XVI, takes over. And Louis XVI, what you say about this man? Well, he was much more enlightened. He was familiar with the Enlightenment thinkers, the Philosophes thinking. He was sort of dubbed the reformer of liberties because he was somewhat sympathetic to the intermediary voices and their causes, but he was still king. He was still under the old rule of absolute rule. The king had absolute authority over everything and power. Sadly, he's going to be guillotined in 1789, but we'll get to that in just a minute. What happens? What is his situation? When he's looking at France from a kingly standpoint in 88, 89, France is bankrupt. They have no money. He doesn't have this wonderful mercantile, fiscal, military state thing going on. There's not a lot of colonies that he's pulling a lot of revenue from. He's fought a lot of wars. He's fought the war with in the Americas, the French and Indian War. He's gone back and helped fight the American Revolution on the American side. He is constantly fighting with England. He's fighting with England in India. France has like major war debt, and they don't have the means to pay for it. Their treasuries are all sucked up. So Louis XVI, he's got no revenue, but he has bills. So he needs to raise taxes. The problem with this is that he needs to ask permission from the intermediaries, the ones that are going to pay him the money. The poor people, they don't have money. They don't have revenues, per se, to pay taxes. So he has to go to that top echelon kind of group of people and ask them, would you please give me money to pay our national debts? And so that the kingdom, the general welfare of the state, the nation, will actually be able to survive. So he goes and he calls for what they call the Estates General. Estates, think of estates kind of like the hierarchy or the social classes, the ruling social classes, those who are going to be part of or make up the parliament or Congress, so to speak. There are 3 estates. The top estate is first estate is the clergy. Those people that work for the church, within the church. Everything from the Pope all the way down. The second estate are the nobles. They are the royalty, the aristocrats. And then the third estate is what they would call others. They didn't really have a category. They were somewhat of the intermediaries, but they were less so. They didn't have a whole lot of say. And so Louis has to ask these folks, this group of people, this Parlement, has to ask these people for permission to raise taxes. Now, who are these others? These others are the lawyers, the business owners, the men of property, those people who have somehow sort of risen in their stature, their social stature, their wealth, their knowledge, to sort of be at the big table, even though they're not really respected too much at the big table. And here's kind of the reason why. You gotta understand what's influencing, what's coming in at this time. The United States just won their independence. Big news, big global news. France has helped them win this independence. The Declaration of Independence is very well known by now. It's been over 10 years. And Thomas Jefferson is now the ambassador to Paris. So you know, TJ, he's over there and he's like, feeding and influencing, much like the influencers online now will influence what we wear, what we listen to, what is the latest trend. He was a big influencer in France during this time. And having written the Declaration of Independence, or at least been the main writer of the Declaration of Independence, he has a lot to say in Paris about what Paris people ought to do for their own civil liberties. And so he's influencing and feeding the fire, so to speak. Other philosophers are continuing to write and popularize their ideas at this time. One of them is Abbé Sieyès. He writes what they call it's a pamphlet. It's like a big essay. We in America say an essay is like what, 5 paragraphs or something like that. This is like a pamphlet. This is a big piece of information. And it's called What is the Third Estate? Remember, the Third Estate are the others. And he's going to influence. And what does he do? Well, he writes this pamphlet and he asks the question, what is the Third Estate? And that's one of his very first questions. He uses kind of a catechism kind of format where he asks a question and then answers his question, asks another question and answers his question. And you as the reader would work then through his argument or his catechism. So the first one is, what is the Third Estate? Who are they? What does it consist of? And he says it's everything. He says the next question would be, what has it been heretofore in the political order? What has it done? What is its purpose, politically speaking? If the Third Estate is everything, then what has it done as far as politics, affecting the society, the politics of the community? And in this response, he says, nothing. Nobody's listening to these folks. Nobody is giving heed to their wants, their desires, and their suggestions. They are just basically talk, and that's it. But if you think about it, what Sieyès is trying to get at is he's trying to say that the Third Estate is what makes up the everything in France. Economics, commercial trade, banking, lawyers, city clerks, mayors, everything that goes on in society is held together by these others. And if they were to all of a sudden disappear, then the economy, the society would absolutely collapse. So why don't these others have a greater say in the politics, the society of France? And that's his main question. He goes back to the end and he says, so what do they want? What do they want to see happen? Well, what they're asking for is to become somebody, something, a voice, a power, an authority that helps shape their world. That's what they want. And if you look at how society, the population, the demographics are broken down, this is a pretty good indication of why he says the others really need to be listened to. So that First Estate, that's the Catholic clergy. They make up a third of the general estates, or Parlement. And they only consist of 0.5% of the total population in France. They're like nothing. French nobility, that's that second estate. They are another third of Parlement, of the law-abiding, the political makers and shakers. They only make up 1 to 2% of the total population in France. So with all the others making up 98%, they make up the third of Parlement. So you would think that they would have an overwhelming influence. But what has been the history is that the first and second estate, they were the ones that really controlled everything. And the 98% had almost no voice. And even in that 98%, those who were allowed into Parlement, they were the upper part of the others. They weren't, a full representation, voting and all that sort of stuff, kind of a republic of all the people, all the way down to the lowest man on the totem pole. So the question that Sieyès asks is why are the elite less than 2% or 2.5% of the population of France controlling everything? Why don't the others do something? Why don't they have a say? And excuse me, that is what's going to happen. There's going to be an uprising, a insurgence of these others that are saying we've had enough. And that is where we're going to start in our next video.